Hello, and welcome to a series of common sense videos by me, the Soul Guru, that will explain and seek to solve a series of life's mysteries in a simple and straightforward manner, using logic alone to draw conclusions and without any Bible bashing in any form. This third video will discuss why God allows suffering. Now, this is a really common question that many people commonly use to prove that God doesn't exist, with the reasoning that if he was a merciful and good God, he wouldn't allow us to suffer, and therefore he can't exist. Now, suffering itself can be divided into two categories. There's the physical pain and death, and there's the mental suffering that's often associated with the loss of loved ones, friends, family, etc. Now, let's get death out of the way first. If you're asking the question, why does God allow suffering, it infers that you believe in the possibility that God exists. If this is true, then you would be of a religious persuasion, and therefore it follows that you believe in a soul. If you believe in a soul, then you believe your soul lives after you die, which somewhat numbs the negativity of death. Death, therefore, becomes a gate to the next realm of existence, rather than the end. Given that most religions believe that the spiritual world is a nice place to be, death is a far more positive prospect and cannot really be defined as suffering. Now, if you don't believe that you have a soul and that a soul exists, you need to see my video proof that a soul exists. The death of someone you love, however, is different, in that you mourn over the loss of the person rather than their loss, as you know they've gone to a better place. Sorry for putting it bluntly. This is therefore a pain induced by the selflessness of your personal loss. Now, we all know we're going to die at some point, and it's rather a question of when rather than if we're going to die. It is, after all, essential that we die in order to make room for our offspring, or else this planet would be really full indeed. It's therefore essential that we die in order to maintain the natural order of all living things. Now, God would not therefore alter this rule, as it is essential for our own welfare in the long run, even though it may be difficult for us to understand this. In order to explain why other forms of suffering occurs, we should look around us, because there is a certain reflection in this world around us in terms of the spiritual world. For example, I am a father of 6, and I am only too aware that children come into this world needing guidance to prepare them for life. I might, for example, tell my child to stop walking in the road. If they did not heed my guidance, I would threaten punishment. If they still did not get out of the road, then I would punish them. Not because I want to cause them any misery, but to ensure that they heed my warning, or else they could be run over in the future and severely injured, which would be far worse than the punishment. Now, suffering is therefore a teaching aid that is often necessary in order for the child to develop maturity and to become an upstanding individual that is unlikely to be killed when crossing the road. Now, of course, I understand my children have a free will and don't like being punished. But I also know that sometimes I have to inflict a little suffering for their own good, even though they may not thank me for it at the time. If you think about it, we all know that our children rarely want to go to school, but we send them anyway for their own good, because we know that a better education will assist them in the long run. Another example is that not many of us like health food or relish daily exercise routines, though we all know that by carrying them out, regardless of our own personal comfort, is necessary in order to be a healthier person. In a way, I suppose you could say that we inflict suffering on ourselves in order for our own personal gain. Childbirth is painful for a mother, but it has its rewards by the birth of their child, etc., etc. This all boils down to the fact that suffering is sometimes that we must endure in order to improve ourselves. On the other hand, if we take a hedonistic approach to life and do whatever our heart desires, we discover that everything we do with selfish motives has a negative consequence. For example, if we're lethargic and eat whatever we want, we'll probably become fat and suffer consequences. If we drink too much or take drugs, we will end up killing ourselves early. If we take on too many sexual partners, we may end up with an STD. And so it is with our spiritual well-being. Although we may not always appreciate it at the time, our development as individuals, both in the mind, body and spirit, is often reached through some form of suffering. Of course, no one likes suffering, and I'm not saying that you should inflict intentional suffering on yourself in order to make yourself a better person. But by keeping the knowledge in your mind when suffering inevitably comes your way, you can embrace it more readily, and your suffering will become less extreme as you do not end up feeling sorry for yourself, and the acceptance has a natural numbing effect on the individual. If you ask those around you who have reached a certain age, they will confirm that some of the most memorable times in their lives have also been the hardest, most difficult times, whilst the least memorable are those that we would class as the good times. Now, change is another big negative as far as many people are concerned. Many hate the idea of change, though change inevitably has long-term bonuses as well as losses. And the acceptance of change as being a necessary evil can allow us to face and overcome change itself far more readily. So, in conclusion, suffering is part of the natural order of things that help us to mature in mind, body and spirit. God does not allow suffering because he wants to cause us harm, but rather he allows it because he loves us. He can see the big picture and gives us what we need rather than what we want, which is what any loving father would do under the circumstances. This is the Soul Guru signing off. Until next time, goodbye.